How's everybody doing? So I just had the pleasure of telling Tyson, wow, you got him wound up. I have to follow that. The good news is I guarantee we will close strong. So a wonderful day from Jez, who started this whole journey, right? To now we're going to close out on a similar story of growth, which I'm very happy to share with you. But I have a quiz that I didn't know Vicky was going to do that one. Here's a quiz for you. So our audience participation right off the bat. How many of you know Constellation Brands? You guys are being a little bit generous, I think. How many of you know Corona? So full circle, you come right from the beginning about brands are what people connect with, right? And this brand has an amazing story, truly, that I'm just happy to be the latest steward of it. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So 1925, this brand was introduced in Mexico. In 1981, it was first imported into the US. So 30 plus years of being here in this country. And I'm going to share with you the latest 3 years of it. But before I do, I'm going to show you something to remind you of those previous 28 years, I guess it is. So that spot is over 10 years old. And more importantly, why I show that is because in 2013 was the time I was asked to take over running Corona. And I told this story to Vicky and Jill and Jamie last night, and Stephanie. And the point was, when I was first asked to take over this brand, I was like, I already know what this story is about. Like, I don't want to take over an existing story. I want to create my own. I've been with the company 9 years. I was working on another brand that was growing fast. It was all fun and games and all good stuff. And the fact of the matter is why did I say that? And it's because this is what we all associate with Corona, right? The beach, blue skies, beautiful turquoise waters. And by the way, this beach does really exist. If you stick around for a beer afterwards, I'll tell you where it's at. It's a great place to go, guaranteed. But more importantly, this is what I was basically the clay of which I started to work from. And it would be really easy to continue that story. Frankly, it would be really easy. And I thought the job was going to be easy. But as we all talked about throughout the day, shit happens. What I mean by that is there was changes in the category. Sorry. All right. So if you can't see from where you're sitting, 4 things were impacting the business back in 2013. I'm sorry, I'm right in your way. I promise I'll tell you what they are. And then 4 things impacting the business basically since 2010 and onward, and really impacting it even more so now. The 4 things are consumers, retailers, distributors, and competitors. I'll touch upon the first 3 because competitors always exist. But the first 3 really have changed over the last, I would say, probably even more 10 years going back, but really impacting us in the last, I'll call it 5. So when you think about consumers, yes, there's the change in terms of ethnicity. Hispanic consumers, fastest growing demographic, we've all read that. There's an article a day on that, and that's great, frankly. But African Americans are also taking more bold steps in the beer space as well as other dynamics within consumers as far as when it comes from ethnic or gender balances that takes place. The other one is millennials. So if you're a millennial, I'm not, guaranteed. You've entered the category in a far different way than it had been entered 20 years ago. And what do I mean by that? 20 years ago, people graduated from college, started to officially drink at the age of 21. But at the age of 21 to like 25, consumers naturally just gravitated to what was either the low cost or what was available, really not thinking so much about what they were selecting. Well, with millennials, it certainly has changed. Because millennials, from day one of turning 21, are asking for quality. They want good stuff. They want to know what they're drinking. They want to basically make a decision that's not simply based on price or whatever you have behind the bar, right? Millennials can nod your heads. I'm not a millennial, but I'm telling you that's what I'm observing. And the other thing is on the chart is flavors. Flavors have entered this category in a big way. Beer is basically 4 main ingredients, right? And you know, water, malt, barley, and I'll forget the fourth, but we'll come back to that. Because that's not as important as, more importantly, flavors are being introduced. The styles of our new styles are being introduced. Old styles are being reintroduced. So that dynamic in terms of consumer consideration as well as expectation has certainly impacted our business. The other thing that's changed is that translates to the retail environment. So all of us have been to a Kroger, been to a store, pick your favorite store. The beer aisle has not expanded. It's not. That cooler, you can draw a tape, whatever, measuring tape, and go back 20 years. It has literally not changed much. Grocers don't like to move things around. You know that firsthand based on your expertise. So all that I just told you about consumer dynamics, well, retailers are chasing it too. And they're trying to find out, like, how do I make sure I have the product that somebody wants when they come into my store? And that's not happening just in the off-premise, as we call it, which are grocery, liquor, et cetera, but it's also happening in a lot of bars. I mean, you go to bars now, and there's some that have 100 tap handles. They have stuff that is readily available locally, but as well as nationally, even from far parts of the world. And so a lot of competition when it comes to what's happening in the retail environment. We like to call it SKU-mageddon or the fragmentation of the industry. I could give you the facts, but we'd be here all day in terms of the number of SKUs been introduced. The other point that it's impacting our business is with distributors. So if you don't know, by law, we have to distribute through a distributor. That came out of prohibition. So we cannot self-distribute. There's certain limitations on there. There's some things you could work around, but at our size, we cannot. And by the way, don't want to take that on for our business. It does not make sense. So where it's more important and why it's pertaining to this, or important to the story, is distributors now have to carry far more products than they used to, right? So the retailer is asking for it, so now they got to go find a supplier, they got to bring it on their trucks, and they got to take it down to the store. So that, dealing with that many, thousands of new products, thousands of new breweries have been introduced. Just imagine the pressure of that local businessman to now be able to figure out how to sort through that while also serving multiple suppliers. So those are the dynamics affecting the industry. Simply put, the category has really just changed from, it says about 20 years ago, it was simply domestics and imports. And now I added crafts here, you got FMBs, you got new styles, far more pressure in terms of what, the landscape has changed. So how are we doing? On Corona, I wouldn't be in front of you if I wasn't telling you a growth story, right? But the fact of the matter is, it's a really phenomenal growth story. Because when I first came on this business, and I think, no, I'm not going to share it, but we were growing low single digits. And I know we talked about growth as a demand from shareholders, but you have to think about growth from the perspective of the brand. And what I mean by that is, I told you what I was up, growing about 1-2% when I came on the business. Dug into the brand, I'll tell you how we did that and all that good stuff. And I said, this is bullshit. I said, we should be growing more than this. And I'm serious. So I'm the dumb guy who goes up to management and says, I think we can grow more than what we're growing today and more than what you have in the strat plan. So yes, wasn't the smartest move of my career, but I believe you got to fulfill the brand's ambition. And it wasn't, I was speaking out of really just strengths. There were things that had not been uncovered yet that we saw, that we felt if we get the energy and the resources of the organization behind, we can achieve this kind of growth. So if you can't see it, we're up 9% this year. And the other brands on the chart are not growing at the same rate, and I'll come back to that. But the point is we are significantly outpacing the category. Here's two facts. Beer industry is up about 1% in volume and dollars. This is a dollar share chart. We're up about 7% on volume, by the way. The other piece that I was telling you is these 5 brands are the biggest brands in the industry. We are number 5. Number 1 import, number 5 in terms of just when you put it all together. So we're the only top 5 major beer brand that's growing at the rate that we're growing. And this is not a one-year wonder. So we have clearly started to fulfill the ambition of this brand. The momentum has accelerated over the last 5 years, and I honestly think we can continue this momentum for at least the next 5. And then I'm going to retire. I'm going to resign. But that's what I'm here, happy to tell you about what we're doing. Now I'm going to tell you how we're doing it. Because this doesn't just happen easily. And I think Tyson said it best. Nothing we're doing, sorry Tyson, I just messed it up, is easy, right? So it's not. So the first thing we had to do was really, and this is truthful in terms of what I believe at my core, which is you got to attract the right talent. And that's internally and externally. So internally, we changed a bit about how we go about looking for people in marketing. So if you've been close to the beer industry people think it's very complex, and you have to be from the industry to understand it and to do well. Well, I said that's not entirely true. I said I've been in this alc bev space now for over, now going on almost 14 years, 15 years, 9 years with this company. And the fact of the matter is, if you get smart people in the room who are passionate about what they do and know marketing, I can teach them the beer industry. We can teach them the beer industry is what I told them. And so for the first couple of hires, I'll guarantee you, that's what I know because I was told. Like, I'm not so sure. And I said, just hang in there, promise you. Now I can tell you, we start with what's the best talent, not who has beer industry experience. So starting with who's the best talent, and then figuring out who's the best person for that role, and then figuring out, okay, what do we need to do to bring them up to speed on the business? The other part is externally. So in 2009, we started to look at our partners, and we had some good partners, but we felt if we're going to fulfill the ambition of what we can do, then we've got to add people to the team. And so one of the teammates that we've added was your company, Interbrand. But we've added a list of agencies to really, as it was said earlier today, be partners with us on this journey. Roll up the sleeves. We're going to get in this. We're not going to say all the nice things, and we're not going to say a lot of pleasant hellos. We're going to have a lot of fun, though, I guarantee, along the way. And so attracting the right talent was one of the major, steps in terms of how we can make it happen, or how we are making it happen. The other piece was now we got to look outward, right? Consumers. Yes, I know this is always stated, but this was a lot in terms of, particularly with a brand like Corona, because it's 90-something, 96% awareness. Unaided, it's like 1 out of 2 people. I mean, it's high. So finding people that can help me learn about the story and what I need to do, that takes rolling up the sleeves and saying, how do we start looking at consumers a little bit differently? How do we make sure that we spend the resources, the dollars, that frankly don't generate a lot of ROI right off the bat, to really make sure we go and we understand consumers? And so we did that work to really understand what their perceptions of the brands were, all the questions but really to understand how do we go forward? Because I showed you that slide about the beach. That isn't in every consumer's head. I needed to move them beyond that, meaning to evolve it, and make sure that they follow this journey going forward and that we are positioned correctly. The other piece is looking inward now. So the brand, right? Be crystal clear about what the brand stands for. And I'll tell you, and I'll share this openly. When I first got in the business, I sat in a creative review, and we had some good work on the wall. And I said, but what is the essence? What are we chasing here? And I got 5 different iterations. But then someone said, but it all boils down to the beach state of mind. I was like, okay, I get the words. I said, but beach state of mind, frankly, that probably means something for me that's different from the person right next to me, and hence why we've got great work that delivers on it, but is that what we should be doing? And that wasn't an easy conversation. I didn't go tell my boss at the time. But it had to be done. And so we did a lot of things to make sure that we understood what the brand stood for today, and more importantly, where we should be going forward. And you'll start to see this as I show you a couple of ads, as well as some really executions of what we're doing, not only just in TV, but across the board. So this first ad I'm going to show you is called Release. It's a spot that, frankly, we developed a couple years ago that really shows how we've evolved from just showing two people on the beach to now showing the flexibility and the brand stretch, if you will, in terms of, more importantly, where the brand's promise or its essence can be fulfilled with the consumer, of course, in mind.
The world's just spinning a little too fast. So just for a moment, just for one moment, just for a moment.
We didn't spend 30 seconds on the beach. We introduced a new line that was called Find Your Beach, because the whole premise of Find Your Beach is that you can have it anywhere. It's your beach, after all. It can be at that bar that you're at later this evening, having tacos, by the way, Taco Tuesday maybe. It could be on the golf course. It could be, with friends. It could be on a beautiful rooftop, just enjoying the sun. That's what we wanted to start to play out and demonstrate that to consumers. And then, of course, we end at the beach because that's an anchor. That's a equity of ours that we know we can pay off in spades and really fulfills the emotional resonance of the brand. And so that was an evolution that took place. And again, one of the things that we're doing differently in terms of bringing this brand forward. Another thing we looked at was our business. So for those of you who don't know, Corona is an iconic bottle brand. Like, that bottle is so synonymous that literally, if we took we've done this exercise actually. You show the back of the bottle and consumers still know what it is, or at least are close. But more importantly, when we looked at opportunities to grow, and hence my bullishness to senior management, is we looked at cans. In the beer industry, 65% of beer is consumed in cans. Our business, Corona, is almost 80% done in bottles. Right? You can do the math. It's pretty we're not right. We're kind of swimming upstream. The fact of the matter is cans only represented 2% of our business just three years ago. And part of the problem was, frankly, the design of the can on the left. Your left, so I'll get out of the way. That was the can we had at the time. And consumers still said, man, if you only came in a can, I'd drink more of you. And I'm like, there is a can. And then we would get misattribution when we showed them the can even. They'd be like, they would name other brands, which I'm not going to name. So we said, okay, we've got to fix this. This makes no sense. But even more importantly, a gentleman who actually introduced this brand to the US 30 years ago, at the time, president and CEO of our beer division, he said, what we're not doing is, that doesn't represent the Corona experience whatsoever. And I think you would agree. When you look at that can on the left, yeah, it's fine. It's not bad. I mean, I'm sure there were good intentions behind it, but it is really not paying off the Corona experience. And it's not representative of the brand in a distinct and ownable way. And so, yes, we introduced the can on the far right. Just 2 years, we're in our year 2, actually, of our relaunch. And we've seen great success, not only due to the can itself, but that's where it starts, because we talked about going to the shelf. Consumers have to see why they're going to pay, by the way, a lot more money for this brand versus something else. And they have to feel good about it when they start to share it with friends. And so we relaunched it 2 years ago. Our business has grown from being 2% cans to now 6.5%. And so, and the momentum's, double digits is crazy. So we're starting to get that going. So that's one of the pieces that we're doing. And another way we started to do is we said, okay, when we talk about this can, or when this can talks, it can't talk in the same manner as the bottles, because then we're just going to be trading out. And we don't want that. We want it to be accretive to the overall business. How do we make it so it's incremental? So when I drink your bottles at the bar, now I'm going on a boat, pick up the cans, and I feel like I'm having the same Corona experience. That's just one small example of my life, I guess. But the bottom line is, I'll show you a spot and I'll tell you a little bit about it.
Take your time, take your time, take your time. No need to hurry. Take it easy, take it easy, take it easy. No need to hurry. slipping, no sliding.
The Corona can always finds its beach.
So you can see from that it's different from our bottle executions, and it doesn't have the same exact tonality, but it's close. And we did it purposefully, or no, with a purpose, excuse me. And part of that is to make sure, as that line says at the end, is it's just another way to find your beach. And that's what it should do. That can has to deliver that same experience that consumers want and expect from Corona. And so that's the can business, which is one of the other ways we're growing. Another thing we looked at is, okay, what's our rightful time to win? Right? When is it that consumers give us the most permission to basically be in front of them and be part of their lives? And a lot of audits and so forth. And the bottom line is summer is our number one season. And not just from a business standpoint. We looked at our attributes, as well as versus competitors. And what we saw was Corona was consistently rated as the perfect beer for summer. And I'm not saying by a slight 5-point margin. I'm talking significantly higher. So it said, makes sense to then double down and throw everything in the kitchen sink against owning summer. So we did that. And so part of it is through a promotion, which we did for the first time just 5 years ago. But part of it is also looking at what other assets you bring to the party. And one of them is packaging. This is guaranteed to be in stores, right? Like this is one of the key things that I know if I go into a store, our package will be there, particularly our 12-pack bottles. And so we took a fresh perspective at our packaging for the summer and introduced what we call our summer package. And so you can see we took off a lot of the iconography that consumers are so used to, and we played up our summer, or the summer cues, if you will, which are the beach, the sun, et cetera. Another way that we've driven this momentum is also by looking for ways to connect with consumers differently, but in a relevant way. So again, that deep dive on consumers also led us into what aspects of their lives are they most engaged with, not only as an individual, but also in social contexts. And so one of the things that we've developed is called a platform called Electric Beach. Yes, it builds off our beach equity, but it does it in a way that's consumer relevant, and most importantly, allows us to deliver I'll call it kick-ass customer experience. Because that's what we needed to do. It's not, and I tell this to everyone I can talk to in our organization, which is it's every touch point that matters. So let's not take for granted that one interaction we might have with a consumer and just do the lowest or the easiest thing to do. I won't tell you what it is because you might not like it, but I'll say, basically give them a keychain. Like that means nothing. You got to deliver an experience. This brand, we have a responsibility to make sure that those touch points are working and basically working hard for the brand, but also giving the consumers a moment with the brand, whether it be 1 second to what I'll show you is more probably a full day. So that's an experience, and it's definitely not an ROI. I'll guarantee you, I know that for a fact. I get into that argument internally all the time. But it does several things for us. One, and first and foremost, if we're going to lead with the consumer, millennials, this is the music genre of their generation. I mean, I read reports after reports. And so let's be where they want to be and where they want to have an experience. It also fits naturally with some of the aspects of our brand as far as daytime, beach, blue skies, outdoors, right? And then third is I'll go back to the cans. It's a great opportunity to get cans in people's hands. So now they don't say, well, I wish you came in a can. You're like, oh, you do come in a can. And actually, it's a pretty kick-ass can. All right. So that's where that fits in terms of our platform. Boxing is similar in a sense. It's a passion point of our consumers. It's a passion point for our African American and Hispanic consumers in particular. It's a sport that's top 3 in terms of viewership and engagement among that audience, as well as a growing sport with that audience. Now, trust me, I get this question all the time. How does Corona fit with boxing? See, I'm getting that. So I asked that question too. But when I looked back at the history of this brand has actually been involved with boxing for over 20 years. Not as big as we're doing it now, but more importantly, again, I go back to the consumer and the other fact, which is we can be a leader in this space. This is a space where the crown, Corona, the champion, lends itself very naturally with the growing demographics, but then also, again, fulfilling an opportunity or an experience with consumers. So we do a lot of things around boxing, of which I could spend about 30 minutes talking about, but I'm not. But I will mention that we've done a full architecture around in terms of fully integrated program, And part of it is these bottles, which we just are actually in market right now, and that your firm developed. So you can see how we take an asset, still staying true to our brand, and bring it forward to consumers in a way that literally on social media, you can go on our website, our social media handles, and you'll find consumers saying, where can I get this? Oh, I really want this. So really good in terms of from packaging all the way to the ring. So the activation is not just happening when there's a fight, it's happening full 360. So with that, here are my key takeaways in terms of how do we get to growth? So right team, talked about talent, right? So important. Actually, I tell people internally all the time, if there's a hiring manager that's not me, I said, you have a responsibility to hire right. I said, don't just say I can hire this person and we'll see how it goes, because that frankly doesn't do the candidate any favors as well as us. So make sure you spend time and effort to make that right. The second one was the deep consumer understanding, which I've talked about. Third is discipline and consistent approach. Discipline in terms of making sure you put the hard work in understanding your brand, your consumer, as well as what you need to do to go forward. And consistency in terms of don't throw everything out. There are a lot of, you will always have some things that are working, so you should always start what's working and be consistent in bringing that forward, but then how do you evolve? And then last is stretch the brand in new ways. I showed you those passion points. There's no way in hell I would have come forward and said to my boss, let's do Electric Beach, let's do this festival, or let's do boxing without having that foundation of understanding. And it gives me great confidence every time I'm asked about it, even today, because I know what it's doing for the brand. And frankly, we do measure it and we see it in our tracking studies in terms of brand metrics. So that allows me to then give forward and continue that effort. So with that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the time today. Thank you for having me. It's been awesome. All right.